Alright, hello everyone. This is Zoungy talking, and today I'm going to try to show you how to create a luminous fire painting like this one. This is a book called Buttons and Beads, which I illustrated a couple years ago. And the way that I created this luminous fire effect was I used three different kinds of contrast. There's contrast of hue, contrast of chroma, and contrast of value. And today I'm going to explain what those three things are and show you a way to do that yourself. So this here shows the three things that I was just mentioning earlier. So all color can be measured by these three things: hue, value, and chroma. And hue has to do with what color the color is. So for example, red is one hue, green is another hue. Value has to do with how light or dark the color is, and chroma has to do with how vivid or dull the color is. And all three of these things are important to understand if you want to create a convincing appearance of fire in a painting. So if you look at the top line here, I've shifted the hue of this red more towards the warm side by adding a little bit of yellow. So we have more of an orangey leaning red here. And on this side, I've put a little bit of a blue or a magenta into the original red to make it cooler. So this is a hue shift from this red to a cooler and a warmer version. The same red here on the value line, I've made lighter by adding white paint, and I've made it darker by adding black paint on this side. And the final line, chroma, has to do with how intense the color is. So the saturation, the intensity, whether it's a vivid or dull version. And here's that same red again, and on this side, I made the red duller by adding gray, and then a little bit more gray. And you can see this one is, quite a bit more dull than that. On this side, I did the same thing. I made the red duller and duller, but I used a different method. And I'm going to have to show you a color wheel to do that. On this side, instead of making the red duller by using gray, instead I used red's complementary color, which is the opposite color on the color wheel of red, which as you can see is green here. So I actually added a little bit of green into that red to make it duller, and then I added a little bit more green to make it more dull. And this is a concept that a lot of people tend to not understand when they're trying to make something look luminous in a painting. They do think of this line here, where you add white paint to make something brighter or black paint to make something darker, but they don't necessarily understand how to make a color appear more or less vivid. And that is going to be an important trick that we use in the painting of the candle, which will look something like this. Okay, so we're going to use all three: hue shift, a value shift, and a chroma shift. And I want to show you this painting here as an example. Let's just compare it to these. In these versions of the painting, I used hue, value, and chroma to create the brightness illusion. In this painting, I did not use chroma. I only used hue and value. So this is just orange paint plus white to make it lighter, and plus black to make it darker. But I didn't use any kind of trick to increase or decrease the intensity of the color in this one. And as you can see, the lighting effect is not as good in this one as it is in any of these three here, which did incorporate the chroma shift. Okay. And before we start working on the candle painting, I'm going to show you a couple more examples. So these are some paintings here by Monet. And Monet and the Impressionists, generally speaking, were good at using these contrasting colors to create the appearance of light in their paintings. So what I'm talking about is, in this one, for example, you can see the red of this house, sort of like a red or red-orange. If you look across the color wheel, the green and the blue-green are the opposite contrasting colors of these two. So because the green and the blue-green are in the same painting with the red, sort of like an orangey red, this is going to pop and appear to be much brighter because it's in the presence of these opposite colors. Okay, so reds and red oranges, greens and blue greens here. And I'll explain in a minute what this has to do with doing the candle painting. In this one, you can see that yellow, oranges, and yellows up here are contrasting with these shadows, which are all the way across the wheel in the blue and blue-violet range, right here. And in this one, there are red oranges and oranges contrasting with blues, okay? Kind of like blue-violet, blue being across from these oranges up here. So you can see the contrast happening in this painting. So this sun and these reflections and these clouds wouldn't look as bright as they do if the rest of the painting weren't in this blue family. So these are complementary colors that are contrasting and helping to create the appearance of light. Okay. I'm going to put these candles back out here. And I just want to show you briefly this chart. What I did was I took some paint and I mixed opposite colors. So blues and oranges, for example, greens and reds. And these are the resulting mixtures. So if you go from one of these colors across through the line, you'll see the gray mixture that I got. In these paintings, one color looks bright because it's in the presence of the contrasting color. So these kind of reds and red oranges in this painting look bright again because they're in the presence of these blues, right? What happens is if you mix the two together, they tend to neutralize each other and make kind of a gray. And if you mix, let's say, for example, a little bit of this cobalt blue into the orange, not too much, instead of a gray, you're just going to get a dull orange. And in a painting like this, what I did was I used pure orange, very bright orange, with no blue mixed into it at all, near the middle of the candle flame. And then as I went away from the candle flame where the light starts to fall off, I added in little bits of blue, and I got duller and duller versions of orange until I'm out here in the corner. So these dull versions of orange are what make the inner versions of orange look like real intense light. So that's the trick that we're going to use today. Okay, and you can have a look at that, screenshot it if you want. Okay. I'm going to paint on that. And this diagram here kind of shows all the different parts separated, and then what happens when you put them together at the end. So in our painting, we're going to do this hue shift. We're going to have more of a kind of a yellow light near the middle of the painting, and then that yellow is going to transition to more of an orangey hue on the outside. The value change in the painting, again, value has to do with light and dark, is going to be obviously light in the middle where the flame is, and then it's going to become kind of a pale gray, medium gray, and then very dark as we get out towards the outer part of the painting. The chroma, the color intensity, is going to shift in that the color is going to be very intense near the source of light, the flame, and it's going to lose intensity as we get away from the candle. I forgot to mention earlier, I do have a social media account. My Instagram is @ZoungyArt, and it currently is a private account, but if you want to follow it, you can go ahead and follow it and just send me a message letting me know who you are or how you heard about this, and then I'll add you back. All right. Okay. So before I start to paint, I want to show you the paints that we're going to use. We're going to use these paints here called Gouache. And here, I don't know if you can see how that's spelled or not, but gouache is just basically like an opaque watercolor, and this is a cheap set here. This is called Royal Langnickel, and you can get this set for about $15. This is another economy set here called Arteza. This one's probably going to be about $20 or $25 for the same number of paints. These are a little bit more opaque and easier to use than this set. And this brand here, this is this is Holbein. And Holbein, these are a professional set. This one's going to cost about $130 for almost the same amount of paint. And the difference is that the colors on here are just going to be a lot more intense. These are going to be easier to use with better coverage. So if you really get into it, you know, you can get a set like this, or you can get a small Holbein sampler set with the 3 primary colors and white and black. This one's about $25. You can also get gouache in this form, like a dry pan gouache, and this set is Pelican, and it's sold as opaque watercolor, but it's more or less the same thing. And if you see temper paint or poster paint, they're also very similar to gouache. They're just sold in larger quantities and they're more watery. Okay. So, and I did also want to mention that I teach at Appel Farm Arts and Music Campus in Elmer, New Jersey, and this video is being made for the Teen Arts Fest at Appel Farm 2020, social distancing version. I also teach at an art center in Reading, Pennsylvania called the Goggleworks Center for the Arts. So if you're in that area and you want to take a class at Goggleworks, or if you want to take a class at Appel Farm, we have programs all throughout the year, and just look them up, and maybe I'll see you. Okay, so I think I'm ready to paint. So for this project, I'm going to use white, yellow, some orange, ultramarine blue, and black. And the reason I'm going to use these is that my white and my black are going to take care of the value portion of the painting, and my yellow into orange is going to take care of the hue shift in the painting. And then the role that the blue plays is I'm going to use the blue with the orange to reduce the chroma of the orange as I get further away from the center of the flame. So all 3 things are going to be overlapping and happening simultaneously in here, and I'll show you how to do that. So I'm just going to squeeze some of these paints here. I don't need too much white because that's only going to be the middle of the painting. And same goes for the yellow. I don't need too much. And I think it's better to squeeze out a little bit of paint, and then you can get more, you know, later if you need to, rather than squeezing out too much and losing it. I'm going to need more orange, because orange is going to be used all throughout the painting, even in these dark areas. That's my noisy neighbor. Okay. And then a little bit of blue. And the black tends to be very strong, so I'm not going to put too much of that out. Okay. And the brushes that I'm using, I'm probably going to start with maybe with this one. So this is just a flat watercolor brush, and I mean, they're not super special or expensive or anything like that. You know, they're nice brushes, but they didn't cost too much. These were presents from my sister. Here's a round pointed one, and here's a smaller round pointed one. I might use them later. I'll put them over here for now. Okay, and I have two things of water. One of them I'm going to use to wash out my brush, and then the other one I'm going to use as clean water so that my paint mixtures don't get too dirty. I also have this rag here, and that's important because with gouache you want it to have the consistency of kind of like a heavy cream, and if you have too much water in your brush, your gouache mixtures are going to get too watery, too thinned down, and you're going to see the white of the paper through the paint. So, you know, control the moistness of the brush with a rag. Okay. Right there. So I'm going to start off by getting the brush wet, and I'm going to grab a little bit of this white. And even though my paper is white, I'm going to put some white where I think that flame is going to be. And the reason why is because I'm going to use that white to blend in the next color, which is going to be this yellow. And the shape of the flame is going to be kind of pointed on top, and then on the bottom it's actually going to go up and in like that a little bit, almost like an upside down heart. All right, I'm going to just take a little bit more yellow. And then what we want to do as we're building these layers out is that we want to form this kind of ball shape, and that's called a corona or a color corona. And if you light a candle at home carefully and examine it yourself, you'll see around the flame this kind of circle forming. Or if you go outside, especially on a humid night like in the summertime, and you look up at a street light, you'll see the same thing. You'll see this kind of haze form, and that's called a color corona. Sometimes it happens around the moon also. All right, I'm going to get a little, actually I'm going to wash the brush out, dry it, and then I'm going to get some orange and some yellow. Okay, so the hue shift is starting to happen here. I'm shifting from that yellow into an orange. And some more orange. And I'm starting to try to form that kind of ball shape, the color corona. I'm going to have to take into account the top of the candle. So I could paint opaquely because gouache is opaque. I could paint opaquely on top of this corona to start forming the candle, but I think what I'll do is I'll sort of sketch it in lightly and try to save that spot just to make it a little easier. And again, I'm trying not to let my mixture get too watery. So as we move away from the flame outward, it should be always getting darker, not lighter. I'm going to go back in with some of that lighter mixture and try to blend out that hard edge. All right. Now the next thing that I want to do is I want this orange, which is sort of full blast orange here, I want the orange to start dropping off in chroma. Okay, I'll show you that chart again here. Maybe I'll just keep this here. I want the chroma, so this is red, but here we're using orange, so pretend this is orange. I want this chroma to drop off, and I'm going to do it by using the color complement, the opposite color, which is blue. Okay, so not too much, just a little bit of blue to start with, because I want the next ring of orange to be almost as bright as this one, almost imperceptibly duller. I don't know if you can see that happening, but these oranges are duller than those. Okay, so I'm going to stop talking for a while. Maybe this part of the video can be sped up. But I'm just going to keep adding blue, more blue and more blue, to make this duller as I go away from the center of the light source. Okay, so believe it or not, the blue and orange mixture did such a good job on its own of getting dull that this right here, this doesn't even have any black in it. This is just blue and orange mixed together, about 50-50 right here. Now, I can't get any more dull with the blue. If I add more blue into this instead of this dull mixture, the addition of blue is just going to make it turn more blue. I'm going to shift from the orange side of the wheel past the middle point, which is this neutral point, I'm going to shift over onto the blue side, and you'd start seeing blue here. So I don't want to add any more blue, but I can go a little darker with some black. So I'm just going to use a little bit of black to really get this bottom part dark. And it's not just pure black, it's black mixed in with these blues and oranges to kind of give it some life. I don't know if it'll show up on the video or not, but in real life you'd notice it. Just black by itself would look kind of flat. Alright, so the last couple minutes, what I'm going to do is just show you how to do this candle, the actual candle wax. And one thing that I'm going to try to do in it is I'm going to try to make it look like the light from this flame is actually entering into the wax right here. You can see how this top portion is a little bit lighter. You can see it in these two. Okay, and that it's the same effect as when you shine a flashlight through your fingers and they glow. This light is entering into the wax and bouncing around, and that's called subsurface scattering. So we're going to try to create that effect. And the way I'm going to do it is I'm just going to use these same mixtures here of orange and blue in the same order. I want the top of the candle to be lighter than the bottom part. And I don't want it to be as light as the flame, because the flame should be the brightest thing. So what I'm going to do is for the very lightest part of the top of the candle here, I might start with one of these mixtures that are further over. I might need to adjust and bring some of this darkness around into here to separate the top of the candle from the background a little bit. Okay, and then as I go down through the candle, I'm just going to take that orange and start, this is actually orange with blue together already, because I don't want this orange to be as intense as this orange. So this orange here has some blue in it already, and then as I go down, I'm just going to add more blue into it, just like I did in the rest of the painting. Alright, and then at this point, I think I can just do the wick. I used a little bit of black there for contrast with the white, and then instead of black for the lower part of the wick, I'm just going to use a orange blue mixture. Kind of let it disappear like that. So I can refine that more, kind of smooth out some of the transitions, but you can see it's pretty similar to these other ones here. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope that you will try to make a candle painting on your own. And if you have any questions, I believe that there's going to be a way to do that in the live broadcast of this video. Thank you. And before I go, I did want to recommend this. This book, it's called Color and Light. So if you want to learn more about this subject, this is a book by James Gurney. This is kind of considered the Bible of light and color theory, but it's a really great book. And if you order it directly from James Gurney on his website, jamesgurney.com, he'll send it to you with an autograph, and it's only like 25 bucks. It's definitely worth it. All right. Thank you, and I will see you another time.